So how many of you are coming here for the first time? Okay. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Pune mobile developers first. So we started as a community in 2013 in August, and our primary focus was on mobile development. So I mean, it's not like strictly into mobile, but we primarily focus on mobile development. And since August 2013, we have taken 35 meetups. So and which I think is quite a good number. So the average comes out to be around like 8 meetups per year. So that's around 1.5 or one meetup every 1.5 or 2 months. And we are actually, thanks to our members, we are one of the fastest growing communities in Pune and in mobile technology. And we have 4,500 plus members and still counting. So what we usually do is we gather like this and we share ideas. So we are all here to learn, and it's not like it's just I'm presenting. So if you want to present something, we encourage that. In fact, so if you have some idea, so just contact me or anybody, any of the organizers on the Slack team, on Slack channel, or directly on the Meetup site, and you can contact us and you can present, like you can show your idea. You want to present this. This is the presentation you have, and based on that, then actually we can arrange this, and you can present on those topics. So that's Pune mobile developers. Yeah, please. Just a few guidelines before we start. So please keep your cell phones in silent mode, and yeah, we expect gentlemanly conduct from everybody. There is a zero tolerance policy against harassment and all. So no abuse of Wi-Fi and all. So you all have Wi-Fi password with the feedback form you have. Otherwise, it's written there. And please respect your fellow members. We are all here to learn. And there are, of course, like there are always some room for improvement. So we have whatever we have planned. So this is like the first meetup of the series that we have planned. So if you have any suggestions, please do mention it. And I mean, you don't have to mention your name if you don't want to. But please do mention your feedback so that we can actually, incorporate those, and we can improve our group and the quality of meetups that we present. And usually what we do is, it's usually an open session. So if you have any questions, you can stop the speaker right there and you can ask it. Unless some other speakers, unless they mention that, keep your questions till the end of the session. Unless that's mentioned, this is the default behavior that we keep. So you can ask the questions whenever you have it. So that's Pune mobile developers we covered. There are a few announcements. I have been actually contacted by some of you guys who want to help in the community. So that is one thing that what we're doing is, if you want to volunteer for some work, so please stay back after the meetup, so that we can use your help to help grow the community and to keep the community live and vibrant. So if you want to help out, please reach me out after the meetup, so we can discuss what we can do. And another initiative that we have planned is collaborative projects. So this will be like, this is an excellent opportunity for you to implement the learnings that we do here, or what you already know, or you want to contribute in some way, or if you're busy, maybe just, review the code. You can contribute in all these ways, and you can, I mean, it will be good for your profile also. So by this series that we have planned, after this series, when you learn Android and iOS development, and and you create some of the collaborative projects, it will be good for your profile also. So you have something to show, and for something, and that what you develop will be, you will know the ins and outs and everything about that. It will be not like any GitHub repo that you just forked from somewhere. It will be something that you developed. So like any open source project will be developing this collaborative project. So I have some ideas. If you have some ideas, you're welcome to share those ideas. So we'll discuss about this after the meetup. Okay. So first of all, this series that we're doing is cross-platform mobile development. So basically Android and iOS development. So why do we need cross-platform app development, right? So if there are like, if you have, if you're just starting your career, you have less than 2 years of experience. and maybe you're a student. Right? So if you're starting out your career, then that's true that at the start of your career, the people who are looking for mobile developers, they will probably not look for Android and iOS and both skill set for the initial entry level developers. But eventually, once you have experience over 5 years, once you become a veteran developer in the mobile domain, then eventually you will actually you will go towards multiple. You'll look for other areas of development. So if you're Android developer, iOS is the next obvious option. If you're iOS developer, Android is the next obvious option. So this is one thing. Another thing is if you're a student. Is there any student here? One student. Okay. So if you're a student, learning cross-platform mobile development will actually help you in it'll help you in increasing your chances for various opportunities in various fields, not just one. And another reason why this is important is there are some things that are expected by default, right? So if you're using an app, if you're building an app, you're using an app. So if this app does not have any offline capability, people will not use it. People tend not to use it. So any app will behave in offline mode is actually it's expected by default. So similarly, if I am providing a solution, I'm creating a chat app, I'm creating a photo sharing application, whatever I'm creating, it is expected that it will be on Android and iOS at least. If not web, then Android and iOS, right? Because if somebody is using my app who's using Android phone, if I'm using some app and I have an Android phone, and my friend who's using an iPhone, I'm not able to share pictures or I'm not able to chat with him, I'll stop that, I'll uninstall that app. So it is expected that if you're providing one solution, one app, it is expected by default that it will be in both the platform at least, right? And another thing is if you are an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, so this is the obvious reason. I don't think any explanation is needed why cross-platform mobile development is needed, because as an entrepreneur, as a hobbyist, you want to actually reach out to as many people as possible. So if you're just by sticking to Android or just by sticking to iOS, you are potentially avoiding a majority of your users, a huge majority of your users that you don't want to do. So that's why we are doing cross-platform mobile development. Yeah, that's it. So now there is an obvious question, right? So if you're doing an app development in Android and iOS both, so why not use some of the cross-platform solutions like Flutter and Xamarin and React Native? So what we believe is this series that we have planned, it's basic and some intermediate stuff, not everything. So once after this series, we can plan this. There is no point in creating Android apps using React Native if you don't know what is Android activity and what is Broadcastreceiver. If you don't know that, then you can create the apps, but you will not know the entirely the process, the ecosystem. You will not know. So this is to make you familiar with the ecosystem. So that's why we're doing this. And is Karan Rathod here? Karan Rathod? No. Okay. So Karan Rathod actually he suggested on the meetup page that we should actually use hybrid apps. So again, for this also, hybrid apps it goes somewhere beyond intermediate to advanced stuff. So first we are covering this. After this, we can take up hybrid apps or cross-platform things. Mrunali Junghare is there. Okay, Mrunali suggested we should also cover Android architecture components. If you don't know about this, this was introduced in Google I/O in 2017. This is a set of guidelines and set of libraries to help you architect your Android app better, so that your app is robust and your code is maintainable and testable. Again, we will plan this after this series. So this series will be covering very basics, and we'll touch on some intermediate stuff like networking and parsing from JSON to Java objects or Swift objects. Anything? Yeah. Yeah. So this completely depends. If let's say you're creating a book my show sort of application, right? So, I would suggest do not create Android or iOS application. Create a website and go with PWAs, that's called Progressive Web Apps. So that works like flawlessly. It works awesomely in Android and iOS. And then again, if you're creating something like Angry Birds, then you cannot go for hybrid or some other application, right? Then you will go with Unity or you will go for native app development. So that totally depends on what is your what is the solution that you are creating, and what type of experience do you want your users to have. PWAs are like fine, right? But when you create something like hybrid, the users will not get that native feeling that they get. So it totally depends. Oh, it's not a performance. Hybrid is the best thing about hybrid is, you don't have to maintain two separate code bases. The same goes with Flutter, Xamarin, and all these things. So one code base, and you're maintaining this for both the platforms. With hybrid, what happens is, like, I created one hybrid application in that everything was Android, but just because I was not able to complete that Google Maps thing on Android, I made an HTML page with JavaScript, Google JavaScript SDK and everything. That was hybrid. So part of the app is native, part of the app is using, the HTML page. So this becomes a hybrid application. So your question was, does it affect the performance? So, like, if you're creating book my show, doesn't matter. Like, you are just clicking it, even if it takes like 2 more seconds to load, doesn't matter. But if you want, like, to give some more experience, in fact, if you introduce material design or something in there, people will, the experience will be much better. So that is why actually this guy suggested a hybrid apps. He's not here right now, but people actually go with this. So I cannot speak for Facebook, LinkedIn, or Redbus. But yeah, if I'm creating Redbus app, I'll go with PWAs. And even if I create native application, most of the code will be hybrid. It will be hybrid application. And e-commerce and all sort of application, also hybrid will be fine. But if you want to use some complex features, some other sensors you want to use, then you have to go with native. Oh yes, there are. You cannot. Yes, there are a lot of limitations with hybrid applications. Because if you just create everything in HTML, right? So if you want a button in your HTML page where if you click, camera will open, take a picture, upload the picture. There are ways to do this. But now if you want gyroscope and other sensors, you want to measure those data, you cannot do that. There are workarounds to do that, but there is no direct way to do it. There are some limitations, of course. Right? Okay, next we have, this series. This is actually an experimental series that we are doing for the first time. We have not done this in our last 35 meetups. So this is actually a series of connected meetups. This is the meetup one of the series. And there will be similarly, like we have planned 10 meetups. It could extend up to 11 or 12. And it also depends on, the progress we have. So, and the main idea behind this meetup was, personally, I'll give you one example. I had an idea of creating some sort of application, some photo sharing application. So what I did was I started development. So it was actually an internal project to be shared with my family, not to be released in the market. So I developed it, I shared it with my family, and they're like, what is this button for? What is this UI? Who created this application? So there are all these sort of questions. So that happened because I did not go through the process of, validating the idea, creating the prototype. So the process is, you have an idea, you create the prototypes, you take feedback from the user, you create focus groups. Once you have the focus groups, you ask the right questions. Do you understand what is this, or do you need some more explanation? You ask the right questions. And once that is done, once you validate your idea, then you start the development. So I am actually, I am quite well versed in development phase, but I don't know about, say, prototype phase. And I don't know about how to release release-ready Android applications or release-ready iPhone applications. I don't know that. So with this series, what this will help us do is it will make us familiar with all these cases of app development. I mean, it will not make you the master of it, but at least you will get to know what this piece is like. You'll get to experience it firsthand, and after that, you can take it up and you can start your own learning from there. Or if you have learned enough, you can come here and present yourself. And in previous meetups, we have taken I think at least in 2 or 3 meetups, I've taken feedback where I asked that, are you an Android developer? Do you want to learn iOS development? And vice versa. And I got a lot of positive response. And this meetup series is a response, is a result of that actually. A lot of us are Android developers and we want to learn iOS development. And a lot of us are iOS developers and Android development we want to learn, but there's always something, right? So this will actually help you get started. It will give you something to start with. Can anybody tell me what is the biggest hurdle in iPhone app development? You have to have a MacBook, faster than light and costlier than light. So at least when you learn it, then maybe if you're working in a company, you can ask you can talk to your admin team or IT team, and you can ask for a MacBook. Or maybe when you learn this, if you see good potential, maybe you can buy your own MacBooks, right? So just because we don't have a MacBook, we should not stop learning it, because there are ways to learn Swift language in general without having a MacBook. And people actually also, they do is they have a Dell laptop and they install virtual machine, they install OS X and they start the development there. So you can do almost everything in there except creating the release IPAs, release ready iPhone applications. Other than that, you can do everything. You can learn the development at least. So this will be the starting point for that, and take your first step towards learning both sort of mobile development. This is for that, and we can learn from the community. So one of the best ways that I found to learn something new, to learn about one technology is, reading something, reading blogs and articles, watching videos is one thing. But when you directly see the code of other developers, directly see the open source code which has been proven and tested by other developers, that is actually one of the great ways of learning something, be it Android, iOS, Node.js, anything. So here we have a lot of talented developers. So I expect everybody to collaborate on the collaborative projects. So if we do, you can actually get a lot of feedback from other people. So learning from the community, this will be actually a very good point for all of us. So that's why this series. So we initially planned for prototyping phase first, but this is actually irrelevant. So in this series we'll be covering the basics of Android and iOS. How do you start with it, and how do you start with the Android and iOS app development, and running your first app in emulator or the actual phone. So let's learn Android. What's her name? Nobody knows? Come on. Yes. Her name is Agnes. So this is what we're going to cover. What is Android? If it seems like an overkill, it is actually. But we'll skip it like in 5-10 minutes. And then we'll see what's platform architecture, Android Studio walkthrough. We'll get familiar with the IDE, and we'll see some components. Then we'll create the app, and we'll see how to debug it, how to create breakpoint and everything. This is actually one of the awesome ways. If you want to learn a new technology, be it Node.js or iOS app development or whatever it is, learn debugging first. So once you debug, you can see the flow of the program, and then you can take it up from there, rather than going to the how Android began, open handset lines and everything. Don't do that. Yeah. So Android is actually it's a mobile operating system based on Linux kernel. It's more than actually an operating system. It's a software stack which is based on Linux kernel. And it has you can also define Android as a user interface for touch screens. And in over 80% of the smartphones which was shipped after Q4 2015, Android is there. Android is present there. So Android is one of the dominant players of the market. And it also powers, by learning Android, you're not just learning app development for the phone, right? There's Android Wear. There's Android Wear, there is Android Auto, there is Android TV. So once you learn that, so you have actually, you're creating multiple opportunities to create and connect with your users in a lot of places, not just one. And in fact, I worked on, we work on a custom hardware, which actually, which is powered by Android. So entire set of Android SDK, Android APIs are available there. It's a custom hardware for swiping card. So we work on that. So learning Android actually has a lot of good benefits. Yeah, as of December 2017, there are 3.5 plus million apps on Google Play. It's highly customizable and it's open source. So when Android when Android first came, right, Android 1.0, I don't know, Eclair or Donut or something, that was not that good. But after Android Eclair, then Froyo, then after Gingerbread was a revolution. After that, Ice Cream Sandwich was a revolution. So right now, so based on the feedback of the community, Android has become it's incorporated all those feedbacks, and Android has become an awesome operating system, and it's become very developer friendly. So what do we mean by open source? We'll see that later. So if you have any questions, please stop me and you can ask the questions right there. Excuse me. This is the Android platform architecture. If you're going for Android interview, this is the first thing you should see. So what this tells us is the base is Linux kernel. Everything is, Android is based on Linux kernel, as I mentioned earlier. And on top of Linux kernel, we have hardware abstraction layer. So this is exactly what it says. It's a hardware abstraction layer. So if you want to communicate with hardware, you have to actually contact via this layer. And here we have native C++ libraries and Android runtime. This is like the Java runtime is there for Java. This is for Android. It came on Android KitKat 4.4. It was introduced in Android 4.4, and it became a default runtime after Android 5.0 onwards. And has anybody heard of Android NDK, Native Development Kit? Okay, few people have heard, right? So if you do NDK, you will most probably be dealing with this layer. So all this set of Android APIs and native things, native libraries, they're all exposed to us via the Java API framework. Some are not exposed, that you can deal with, you can directly connect here by using NDK. Using the Java API framework, all these are available to us. And as I mentioned here, Android is highly customizable and open source. What does it mean? That we have a lot of system apps, right? How many of you have Android phones? Just a quick show of hands. Yeah, okay, almost everybody. So what does this mean is, in the system app, Android is highly customizable, right? So I can create a messaging application that anybody in the world can actually, set that as their default SMS application. I can create a calling application, and anybody can set this as a default calling application. So system apps, they do not have any special privileges than the user apps, the apps that we developed. So this is the portion where our apps come in. There are some exceptions, of course, because you cannot create settings application. Even if you do, you will have to go through the system setting app. Other than that, almost everything is customizable in Android. So you can create a browser, and I can make that a default browser on my phone. So that is what is meant by highly customizable, and that's what it's meant by highly customizable. So this was the platform architecture. Let's see a few more things, then we'll see Android Studio. So when we talk about building blocks of Android, there are resources. In any app that you see, there is a launcher icon, there is some audio file, some sort of image. Some things are there, right? So there are layouts, there are strings, there are images, there are colors. So these are all count as resources. And these are the components. This is the second important question for Android interviews. What are the main components of Android? So we'll see about that later. But yeah, it has activities, services, and some helper classes. These are the Android components. When you create an Android application, you'll have to deal with this. Excuse me. Then there is manifest. Manifest is the information about the app for the runtime as well as for the Google Play Store. So in the manifest, you can mention things like, if you have an activity, you have to mention there. If you're using a permission, you have to mention there. If you have a photo sharing application which uses front camera, and you don't want your app to be installed on phones which do not have the front camera, you have to mention in the manifest, and Android will actually not show this app for the phones which do not have the front camera. So you can use things like users feature, users permission, you can use things like that in the manifest. And then there is build configuration for different APK versions, and this Gradle config files. So Gradle is the default build system for Android Studio. One of the awesome features that I like personally is in the Gradle is creating multiple versions of your app. So if you have created, if you have seen this thing, Angry Birds, if you have played, anybody played Angry Birds or some other games, which is like, it will be, there is a free version available and there is a paid version available. So if you want to create something like that, you can use Gradle for that. You can create various versions. You can create free version, which has a limited set of features, and a paid version, which has full set of features, and a freemium version, half of which is free, half you paid, that it will be available. So you don't have to maintain multiple source code, multiple copies, just one code base, and you can maintain all that. That comes with Gradle. So I mean, this is the basic session, so we'll not be discussing about those. This is just like one introduction I wanted to give you. These are the components I was talking about. The answer to the question is, what are the main components of Android? Is these four: activity services, content provider, and broadcast receivers. So activity is the single screen with a user interface that you see. That is an activity. Services is something, you perform long-running tasks in the background, like you want to upload a video on Facebook, right? So the uploading of video happens, depends on the network connection, it depends on the size of the video. So this all should happen in the background. So we use services for that. We can use services for that. Content provider is like, it's for sharing the data, manages the shared set of data. So if you if you have Gmail app in your phone and you install some other Google app like Blogger or some other app you install from Google, so you don't have to again re-log in. So you see all the accounts there, right? All the accounts that are there in the phone. So you can share this type of data using content providers with your own apps, or you can expose this to other developers. Is if you have used Evernote. So Evernote has they have a particular set of content provider and they expose some of the API using this to allow other developers to store one particular note in Evernote, so they can directly use it without having to open the application. Broadcast receiver is like, it's a response to system-wide announcements, or it can be local also. So if you have an SMS application, you want to show a notification you received an SMS from this guy. So it broadcasts an intent. You listen to that intent, and you can know, okay, this SMS is received, and yeah, you can perform other stuff with that. These are the four main components of Android. Now let's talk about Android Studio. What? Sorry. Light sensor. Okay. Just catch the light, and based on that, my app will respond. From this, the fourth component is that we can just our cell activity. So you're talking about external sensor. That's light sensor, right? Yeah. So the sensor is external. It's not in the phone. Now you have to have some sort of converter. I don't know what's called. Anyway, so you have to connect it with your app. So your app will get a signal that, okay, this light is low or high, or it's crossed this threshold based on that. This is completely external. It will not come here. It depends on what you want to do with the light. If you want to, enable like battery saving mode, so everything is happening in the background. So you don't need an activity for that. You just create a broadcast receiver. It will listen to an intent, and from that intent, when you receive it, you just start you fire an intent to go into battery saving mode. Oh, you're talking about that sensor, okay? That is proximity sensor. If you put your thumb also, it's gone. So this is typical stuff. You can create an application which does not have an activity also. No activity, no screen, no UI. You can create that sort of application also. So Android Studio is the official IDE or the de facto IDE for developing Android application. So now you don't have to use Android Studio. I've seen some repositories where people actually, created Android application using Scala language, different sort of language they can use. But yeah, this is the official IDE, recommended IDE. If you want to create your own language and create Android application, you can do that. But please don't. With this, you get a lot of proven stuff that is actually required for Android development. You can develop, run, debug, test, and you can package the application for distribution. Excuse me. You can monitor performance. You can monitor. It has performance and monitoring tools. So you can you create an application. Now you want to measure the performance, if it's having effect on the battery or not. If your app is awesome, but it actually it drains like 20% battery in 5 minutes, nobody's going to use that, right? So you can measure all that. If it's having a lot of effect on the CPU or GPU, is it making a lot of network calls? Your app is making for apps like Netflix and all, it's fine to use 20 MB of data in 2 minutes. But for a regular apps, if your app is using 50 MB of data in 1 minute, so you can measure that, you can monitor that, and you can optimize the network calls or whatever is actually giving strain on the CPU or GPU or the network. It also provides you a way to create virtual devices. It's a great way to run and test your application without having an actual device. There are project views you can set it out, you can lay it out the way you want, and there's a visual layout editor which helps us in building the UI for the application. Anybody here who has not used Android Studio and an Android developer? Okay. IntelliJ, has anybody used IntelliJ? So if you've used IntelliJ, Android Studio is actually based on top of IntelliJ itself. So you will not find it like very different from IntelliJ. So now let's see Android Studio. So right now, I think 3.0.1 is the latest version. And Android Studio also has 3 separate channels. So there is Canary channel, there is a beta channel, there is a RC candidate, and there is the stable channel. And so if you want to test out the latest bleeding edge technology, bleeding edge Android Studio, you can actually download the latest version. I think 3.2 is available in Canary right now. So it's not stable, it will crash, it's expected, but yeah, if you want to try out new features, you can use that. This is the stable version I have right now, which I don't know where is the version. It's 3.0.1, yeah. So once you open Android Studio, if you have opened any project recently, it will show up here. And if you have not, it will be empty. So you can actually do a lot of things from here. You can start a new Android project. You can open an existing project that you actually checked out from GitHub, or copy it as if from somewhere. You can check out a project from version control. This is one of the best features of Android Studio. It actually probably came with IntelliJ, but you can directly, if you're using Git, not exactly GitHub, if you're using Git source control, you can directly check it out. In one of the projects that I use, Git Bucket, which is my company internal thing. So I actually directly check in from my IDE Android Studio. I don't have to go to terminal and type all those commands and remember all those commands. You can profile or debug the APK right from here. I mean, you can do it from there also. And this is another option, is to directly import Android code samples. If you want to learn about Recycler View, or if you want to learn about how to deal with cameras and all, there are a lot of code samples available. You don't have to open GitHub and download it and then open from here. You can directly click here and import from Android code samples. You can do it right here. So let's start with the new project. This is the default application name, my application. I'll just name it click counter. This will be your company domain. So if I do something like this, so you can see based on my, if this is my company domain, this is my registered domain. So based on this, the package name is decided. You can obviously you can go here, you can edit it. So let me just do this thing. Yeah, this is fine. This is the project location where you want to store it. Oh, any Google scholarship here? Any Google India scholarship winner here? No? So, yeah, let me just create one here. I specified the location, my company domain, and I can actually edit the package. So let me put it com.pmd. So this package name is the unique identifier of our application. This should be unique. This has to be unique. If it's not, Google will not let you upload on the Play Store. Any Kotlin fans here? Anybody who used Kotlin? Okay, a few of you. Kotlin is an awesome language. Please use it. And starting Android Studio 3.0, there is an inbuilt support for Kotlin, so you don't have to install any libraries or anything. Just check this and you're done. Even if you don't check this, you can do it. You can use Kotlin inside the Android Studio project. If you've used Java and you like Java, you're gonna love Kotlin. Next. Okay, now here, by the way, you can actually change all the settings after this step also. This is just for as a starting point. Android Studio is asking us to set all these things. Even if you select whatever you want here, you can change this later. So now when you create Android application, so it asks what is the API version you want to install it on. So this is actually the minimum version you want your app to run on, right? So what is the, if I choose this, Android Studio tells me by targeting API 15 or later, you will run, your app will run approximately on 100% of all the devices. So if I choose something latest, which is let's say Marshmallow onwards, so my app will run on 39.3% of devices. So one obvious question that arises here is, this is actually, these are the devices active on the Google Play, not all the devices. So, this is the minimum version which your app will support. So if I have a phone which is running on 4.0.0, I will not be able to execute this app because the minimum supported is 4.0.3, right? So why not just select 1.0 or something, right? Does anybody know the answer? Why not select 1.0 or something, the oldest version possible, so my app runs on all the devices available? Right. So older SDKs, there are a lot of limitations there, and even the support libraries, if you see, it's the minimum support is like 2.1, 2.2 onwards. So, and anyway, after this, you're getting 100%. So you don't need to actually go beyond this. So there are capabilities. So if you want to use, the newer things, new APIs and all, if you're supporting older devices and older versions, you will not be able to use that. And with here, you can actually also create companion app for VR, TV, Android Auto, Android Things, and Google Glass. So Android Studio, using Android Studio, you can create all this companion application. So even if you uncheck this, if you not selected this, you can add it later from Android Studio. So now let me select Jelly Bean 99.2, which is good enough for me. And this is the activity gallery. So these are the templates for activity. So what do you want to create? Do you want to add no activity, basic activity, bottom navigation activity? There are a lot of things here, like add more activity, full screen activity, login activity, tab activity. I'll just go with empty activity. After this, it will ask you for what is the name of the activity and what is the name of the resource file. So in Android, what happens is when I say activity is it's a Java class, and the activity is actually the UI is defined in XML, and you connect it with the Java code. So this activity name, this is actually the Java class, and this is the layout name, which will be XML. So we'll see both. So I'm just leaving it to default main activity, and the layout name is activity underscore main. I did not show where to download it. You just Google download Android Studio. The first link you get is Google, so you can download it from there. It's available on Mac and Windows and Linux. So Gradle is the default packaging system, as I was saying earlier, till this builds. So what Gradle does is, with Gradle, you don't have to carry the jars that we used to carry earlier. If anybody has coded in Eclipse, you've done? Okay. So if anybody has created Android application in Eclipse, that was a big problem. You download the jar 4 MB or whatever, then you put it in libs folder, then you connect from there. So with Gradle, all that is gone. You just mention the dependency. It takes the dependencies from Bintray or Maven, or you can also use Ant or Maven. It takes it looks there in all those places. And recently, Google has also created their repository. This is the tips that you get. So this is the default Android Studio. Default template for Android Studio. These are the views. This is Android view. I can change the view. So let's change it to project view. Now this is actually the actual folder view. Yeah. Yes. Yes. It downloads on the go. Once it's downloaded, Gradle, if you're using this, actually, I'm not sure about that. So in your system, usually there is a .m2 repository for Maven. So there it stores everything. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Do you know about that? Uh-huh. Okay, so it takes it from there. So there are ways to do that. So you can actually, as per our community members, what they're saying is, you can do that. There are ways to do this where you use the same library in multiple projects. Yeah. Yeah. Gradle is actually it's build tool plus. It's actually it's the best of both worlds. It combines both Ant and Maven. Maven is it's actually more than a build tool. It's also a repository where you keep the binaries online. So it's actually a combination of both. It's a build tool plus that. And Gradle actually, even if you have a dependency on some Maven repository, which is online somewhere in Maven servers, so you can download it from there also, from Ant and Maven, or you can actually, you can create your own URL. You can make it, and you can host your own libraries there. So you can specify the custom URLs in the project level build.gradle, and from there it'll download. By default, let me see this. Okay, so we'll see about that later. Is it visible, this thing? Okay. I cannot actually increase the font for this. So anyway, this is the Android Studio after I set up all those regular things. So now let's see what are there. This is the project structure. This is the project structure, and this is the default app folder, which is called app. You can actually name you can rename it to something else if you want. In one of the projects, what I did is, you can again, right click here, new, you can create a new module. And from here, I added actually something else called mobile. So this does not have to be, this necessarily need not be, the name need not be app. Yeah, please. So this is our actual app, and there are three main Gradle files called. This is the project level build.gradle. There is settings.gradle, and there is the module or app level build.gradle. So in this, let's see this first. Settings level build.gradle tells you which folder to include as a project. So it's telling me to include app. So if I have another folder here, if I don't want to include it, I mean, I'll just remove it from here. So settings.gradle, this is the entire content of settings.gradle. Let's see project level build.gradle. In project level build.gradle, it tells which Gradle version to use. For all projects, these are the two repositories to look for. One is Google that I was saying, and the NGS If you want to use Maven is by default. You can also mention it here. So in these two, it will look for the dependencies first. So if I specify something like some networking library or some material design library, it will look here, then here. If you have something custom, like you were asking, right? If you have something custom, you can add here. If you have created some library, you can use, there is a extension called Jetpack, right? Jetpack, right? Yes, using Jetpack, actually, you can specify Jetpack dependency here, and your library will be available to anybody who uses it, who wants to use it, actually. This is the project level build.gradle. So the entire project level file you have to keep here. Dependencies and project related stuff you have to keep here. So and in this project, actually, you can have multiple folders. One I have in one of my projects, like there's multiple apps, and they're all related, not exactly same. So I cannot use that same Gradle, what is it called, product flavors. I cannot use that, different Gradle versions and all. So these are like quite similar. So you can have multiple folders here, which are all representing different apps. Next, so this is outside this thing. This is the project level things, and there are some. This is like IntelliJ IDEA folders. There is a .gradle is a Gradle folder, so you don't have to look in it. You don't have to look into it. There is a build folder which is actually it's generated by by Android Studio. So these are the files that are generated automatically. So don't try to like delete. Don't try to edit these files. And these are the files that are generated automatically. So even if you delete it, it doesn't matter. Android Studio will recreate those files. This build, this is a project level build, and there is an app level build. So let's see in project. This is app level build.gradle. Oh, sorry. This is the app level build.gradle. So if you create another module, this is the apply plugin you write. com.android.application. This tells Android that okay, this module is Android application. If it's a library, it will be this. I think it's called com.android.library. And this is the Android block where you tell what is the compile SDK version, and these are default configuration, the build types. There's debug. If you have any more custom, it will come inside this Android block. And these are the dependencies. So if you have used older version of Android Studio or IntelliJ, they used to write compile here. So now it's called implementation. There are some difference in that. So now, like this thing, there is my project currently depends on com.android.support app compact v7 library. So it will look for this in the project level build.gradle here. So it goes to Google, it finds that. If it doesn't find anywhere, Gradle will complain, okay, this dependency is not found. So either something is incorrect, so please correct it. These are the dependencies section. Now build section, we'll talk about this later. Yeah, these are default config section. So this is you remember the project, the package name that we gave. It comes here. I gave PMG instead of D. This is the unique identifier of our application, and it's called Android ID. This is the minimum SDK version. We selected Android 4.1 Jelly Beans. So this is actually the API version for that. This is another famous Android interview question, like what is the difference between compile SDK version and target SDK version? So I'll tell you just in a second. Then there is version code and version name. So this is like, you should follow like semantic versioning system. So when you release one app, one version, right? Then you update the app, you raise the next version. So always update version code and version name. So this is how Android Studio and even Google Play knows, okay, this is version 1, this is the updated version. So I'm using version 2 and you're giving me version 1.5. So it will say, no, this is downgraded version. So if you want to send update, you have to update this for these two things, version code and version name. This is how Android and Google Play knows this is the next version, newer version of the app. Now back to compile SDK version. So compile SDK version is something, where you have compiled for which you have compiled your application. So if you have compiled your application for, let's say, API level 26, so all the set of APIs for API level 26 will be usable. But since you're supporting minimum SDK version of 16, so you cannot use all those things. Target SDK version tells you that you have tested your app on this version. So it's very common to have target SDK version. Initially, target SDK version will be if the minimum is 16, target is 20, and compile is latest 28. And once you keep testing in the latest version, so eventually what it becomes is your compile SDK version is, let's say, 26. Your target SDK version is 28, and your minimum SDK version is something that you support, whatever is minimum. So target SDK version, like in one line, if you want me to say, the target SDK version is like a hint to Android. Okay, we have tested our app till this version. Anything after this version should not be included. So like a lot of changes came with Lollipop and Marshmallow. So if your target SDK version is below that, those changes will not be reflected in your app. Compile SDK version is where your everything is compiled, right? In which version you have compiled and tested. So that's compile SDK version. These are for testing. Now, I hope this is visible. There are two folders here, Android test and test. These are for testing, which we'll cover later. Not for, I mean, it's beyond the scope of this meetup, this meetup. And after that, we have got two folders, Java and resources. And here is the manifest file that we discussed. So this is, if you want to use an activity, you have to define here. You want to use a service, a content provider, a broadcast receiver, you have to define it here. You want to use internet permission, you have to define here. So things like if I want to use internet permission, the syntax is something like this. You do a user's permission, then you do internet. So now my app can use internet. If without writing this statement, if I try to access some URL, it will my app will crash. Android will complain that permission is missing. So you want to use anything, you want to access context or something like, so you have to mention it here. Now this Java folder, this contains all the Java code, and this res folder, this contains all the resources. So there are various things. Let's see the resources folder first. There is drawable, version 24, layout. There are different things. There are maps for different densities. So this map is actually for launcher icons. So if you want to create whatever your app is, you have a launcher icon. So you want your launcher icon to look good in low resolution and high resolution, all sort of devices, right? The main problem with Android is it's open source and like there are varying resolutions. So your app has to support all those resolutions. So keep all those resolution things here. You can check out the standard Android documentation, like what is the ratio between all this. So right now, if you see there's IC launcher, this is the icon that Android gives me by default. If you want to create something else, you create for all this resolution. It's recommended to create for all the resolution, not just one resolution. Because if you just create an item for HDPI, an icon for HDPI, and if this app is, if it runs on XXX HDPI phone, this icon will be scaled up and it will look so distorted. I mean, you should not do that. So this is HDPI, high density pixel, this is medium, this is extra high, double extra high, triple extra high. This is only for, so we're talking about resources. By resources, what I mean is, the images, the icons, any audio file, any video file, any file you have, any random raw file you have, that goes in resources. Then there is values. There is strings XML. This is one of the important parts. So what strings XML we use it for is, we use it for externalizing strings. So in your app, if your app has 30 strings which is visible to the user, including OK, cancel, internet is not available, please try again later, all the strings which is visible to user, you want to put all those strings here. So let me create one here. Name is equal to, say, the spelling correct? No. AVAI. So this is one string that I'll probably show in my app, and I have defined it here. So now, why should I define it here, right? Why should I define it here? Why not right where I'm creating it? So if you know about localization, you already know the answer. If you don't know about it, so I'm defining it here. So this is in English. Now I want my app to to run in Russia also. I want to change it in Russian. So I don't have to change the source code and everything. All I want to do is just change the user visible text strings to Russian. So I'll create a different folder here. It will be called values-ru, which is for Russian. And I'll put the key will be same, internet not available, and this text will be in Russian. So whenever whenever the local is set to Russia, it will show the Russian string, or else it will show the default this one, or some other local is there. If it's in Chinese and I have created a values-cn folder, it will take it from here. So this is the localization part of Android. Now this is done. Similarly, colors and styles are there. If you want, there are multiple places you want to use it, define it in one place, and you use it everywhere. So the style is like, okay, we'll talk about that later. So it's like, like a particular color you want to apply on all the buttons, or like for some set of buttons, not on all. So you can define the style here. And then there is layout file. When I was talking about activity, when we created it, there were two files. One was main activity, another was activity main.xml. This is activity main.xml. This is the visual layout editor. Yeah, so by default, this is what Android gives me. Hello world is one string. It has somewhere in between. It's using constant layout by default. And yeah, this is the visual layout. This is its XML representation. If you want to see it side by side, there is a way to do it. This is the XML, and there is a preview here. Yeah, we can make the changes here. And can you see the text hello world here? Okay, so now let me change it. This is one way, right, to include the text right there. But seeing this will be visible to user. I want to change it. I want to pick it up from the strings folder, the strings resources that I put there, right? So this @ symbol, this tells Android that, okay, we are going to use some sort of resources here. So now, yeah, it gave me a suggestion. This is the string that I created, and it changed there. Yeah, that string is visible here. Close the preview. This is the project structure. Okay, so now we are familiar with this part. We are familiar with preview. We are familiar with Gradle. There is a Gradle section as well, which will tell you the tasks. So in Gradle, if you read about Gradle, so Gradle has Gradle tasks. So like compiling everything is a task. Shrinking assets is a task. Everything in Gradle will be a task, and these tasks are actually interdependent on each other. So once you run it, all this is compiled, everything is packaged into one debug application, and this is actually deployed in an emulator or actual device. So you can see the Gradle tasks here. For app, there are the tasks. These are the tasks. For build, these are the tasks. Assemble, debug, assemble, release. You can double click on it to start the task, but please do that after you are actually well versed with Gradle. Yeah.
Is this a place to define the
No, that's not the place.
constraint layout and also
The
4-inch phone and 5-inch phone?
Yeah.
How do you make that?
Okay, so there are actually different ways for handling screen resolution. Okay, I missed that part. So one is this thing that as I mentioned, right? If you want your app, you want to create one app which will work on low resolution devices, high resolution devices, tablets as well, right? So this is one thing. For launcher icons, you can put it here. The other thing that people usually do is they create something here that is called value resources file. So this is dimensions.xml. So here you actually, you put things like item name is box size, and you put it something like 30 dp. So this in Android actually uses two systems. One is dp. So dp is actually, it's not an exact pixel size. It's a proportional. It's a ratio. So based on the phone's DPI, it converts it into the pixels. So now, and there is for text sizes there is SP. So when you define DP, you created a box, you created a text view, right? You created some sort of label, and you gave it like 80 dp by 20 dp. So when you do the DP, so on different resolution, the DP will scale based on the phone's DPI. You can do that. There is one way to do it, or you can actually create multiple folders here, like here. Drawable v24. So this, when the phone's version is API version is 24, it will pick from this drawable, everything from this drawable except the things that are defined in this drawable. So if this is generic drawable, right? So if it contains 20 things and this drawable contains 2 things, so those 2 things will be picked from this folder, other from that folder. So there are various ways to do it. And if you want to ensure how your app looks, right? Let me show you that also. You want to ensure how your app looks. This is the preview. So there are some preset devices here. How it looks on Nexus 7 or 7-inch tablet. This is how it looks on a 7-inch tablet. Or let me go beyond that. 1080p. This is TV. Definitely not good for TV. This is how it looks in Nexus 5. So there are some preset things here for you to check. Okay. So now I have covered that. Okay. And another thing is actually, when we usually do these things. Now, one thing is, this is the resources folder only. We have not seen Java folder. So we'll see that in a minute. Yeah, this is the main activity that we created. So this is the Java class, where we'll do the main actual coding of our application, and how it connects with the XML file is here. Here. So r.layout.main. This says activity main. So this is connected with that activity. When you launch this, okay, let me show you a few more things first. When you create an application, the first activity that you created, right? That becomes the default activity. That activity is registered here. It's called .main activity. This dot is your package ID .main. So our package ID is, okay, it will not be shown. Yeah, here it's shown. This is our package ID .main activity. So our app right now has only one activity, and that is registered here by Android. So if you want to create more, you have to either manually register it, or if you create via templates, Android Studio will do it automatically for you. And this intent filter here tells us that to launch this activity when the app is launched. It is a main activity and it's a launcher activity. You can see the intent filter here. You can see the 2 actions here. So now another thing that I want to show is the build folder. Inside app there is a build folder which contains generated intermediaries output. So this is also generated automatically. So you should never manually edit any content of this folder. If you delete it anyway, Android Studio will recreate it. So let me show you one thing. So when we added this layout file, you can see in the generated folder, oh, where does it? Okay, let me show from here. I don't know where that is. Probably in source. No. Is it in intermediaries? Probably. Okay, Android Studio has changed a little bit. This is probably the APK anyway. So anyway, when you run this application, even the APK that is generated, that will come under the outputs folder, and there is a build folder. Inside that it will come. The APK will come here, and when you generate the release ready APK, you can actually specify the destination. Even if you don't specify, it will come in this build folder, which is generated automatically. I could do that. Yeah. It's not created, but we can use it anyway. Yeah, we'll do that later when you do that. So R is the auto-generated class which contains the reference to all the resources we have. So when you create a file inside layout, inside res layout, there is main.xml. So how to reference it is like this: r.layout.activity main. So if you see this, there is a reference for that. That's some hexadecimal number. So this is how it gets connected with the XML layout. So now whenever I launch this activity, so this activity will be launched, right? From the manifest we know that dot main activity will be launched, and dot main activity says that its UI is r.layout.main using set content view method. So this is the main activity. This is the first launcher activity. Now let's say activity lifecycle we'll see later. Now let's say I created a method called internet available or whatever. Now I have not implemented the method. I actually plan to do it, but yeah, I didn't do it. So I just put a to do here. To do if you have used. Android Studio gives a nice way to actually to list all the to dos. There is a to do section right here. It will show you there is one to do here. So when you're creating the structure, you're just defining the structure. You're not actually doing the implementation. Put a to do there. Come here, you resolve all the to dos, and it's done. You can also do it in current file scope based. You can create a custom scope like only in these two packages, not in everything. This is one thing. Logcat, if you see, if you have any emulator or any device connected with it, it will show here. The connected device will be listed here. The application that you're debugging will be listed here. And this is the log level. I will see about that. Oh, by the way, are you aware of the log levels? It's a generic thing, not specific to Android. So verbose is something that we do while testing, debug as while testing, warn an error for any error warnings that we want to, if you're doing something, you're doing a try catch, then you put a warn or error there, which should never happen. And there is an assert also, which for this actually, the severity is higher. There is one more log level in Android. What is it? Anybody knows? Huh? Yes, there is something called log.wtf for what a terrible failure. Yeah. So never use it because its behavior is unknown on actual and emulator devices. So don't use it. So no code. And Android Studio also comes with an integrated terminal. If you want to use Git, If you like to use Git in terminal, you can just do it here. It's actually system level terminal is here. So this is in Windows, Mac, everything. Let's say that's not a Git repository. I can just initialize the Git repository. It's done. So you can use like directly integrate terminal. You don't have to open the terminal. If you open the terminal, then you'll have to navigate there and all, right? So this directly opens it in the project folder, which is click counter. And Android gives another feature, like for the files, there is something called local history. So if you put something there, the file was in some level, then you edited it, and Control Z is not working, Command Z is not working, you can see the history. It was edited 3 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, and you can compare it. What are the changes? This is another nice feature of Android Studio. So like this, there are various features. And for the Gradle, actually, this is another interview question, and a general thing that every Android developer should know is, with Android developer, it doesn't directly use the Gradle version, it uses a Gradle wrapper. So, if let's say if we two are working in one same project, if his Gradle version is 4.0, mine is 3.4, so it will not affect the same app you're working on, because the Gradle, it's using Gradle wrapper, which is using some Gradle 3.8. So it's actually, we don't have to install that Gradle wrapper 3.8, Android Studio will take care of that. And when you want to create a new activity, just directly select this, or you can click it from anywhere. Right click here, and there is a new activity. You can either pick from the gallery, or you want to create it manually also. Here is the activity gallery that we saw when we were starting the project. In the layout editor, so let me show you this thing after the PPT. So we have covered project structure, templates, layout editor, Gradle based build, log console, debugger, and we'll see monitors and emulators are left. We'll see that. So here, if you open, okay, we'll show you with the app when we develop that. So monitor is actually the Locket monitor. With the app, we'll show you, we'll develop this app. We have already seen this, manifests, Java, REST, Gradle. You've seen Gradle wrapper, module level build.gradle, project level build.gradle. This is the layout editor and views. So in Android, everything that you see is a view. So a button, a text view, the entire layout, the action bar, everything is a view. So this is actually, knowing this, the base class will be view. So from that, everything extends. So now we'll see how it's created this, how to create this application. These are some examples of view. So I hope everybody has seen all these things in any of the applications you use, right? So now creating the layout, there are 3 ways to create layouts. One is actually graphically with Android Studio. Another one is directly writing an XML file. And another one is programmatically. So whichever way you prefer, you can do that. Programmatically is actually, it's actually I use it only when needed, not all the time. This is creating the layout. This is creating the layout just by XML. And if you want to use the preview thing, this is the preview. Here's the palette. I want to add a button. I can just drag a button here. Say below it, the button is added. So we can use, this is a visual layout editor. So we can also visually, we can just drag and drop and create the entire view. Programmatically, we'll not see in today's session. So let's create an app. Yeah, and then you want to. So now we'll actually create one application. We'll create one application which uses, and this we'll see the debugging, how to debug it, how to locate the bug, and how to basically use what we learned.
Okay, hi everyone. So now I'll show you how to create one simple application in Android. Okay, so we are going to create one application with one button in the middle. One text will be on the top of the button. If you click on the button, this text will increase. First it will be 0, then it will 1, then it will 2, then it will 3. Okay. So let's move to the Android Studio first. This is the project. And we have already seen that for each screen, we have one Java file and one XML file, right? So in the XML file, we'll design the layout and we'll write all the code in the Java file. Okay. So this is the XML file. Let me remove all these things. Check the preview. It looks like a blank screen. First, in Android, we need to create one base layout. Think it like an canvas where we're going to draw all these things. Okay. The base layout is the back layout. So, for example, I am going to use one layout called relative layout. So, in Android Studio, you can, if you think any error mark, you can just simply click the Alt and Enter key, and it will show you what are the things missing. Like it's like layout height is missing. It's the height of this layout. Okay. So it's showing error. Then I'll click again Alt Enter, and it has imported something called XML namespaces. You can think it like some rules that are specified for this XML file. So layout height, I'm giving it as match parent. Match parent means it will take all the height as a parent view. That means the full screen. Similarly, layout width also we need to give. It's showing error. Okay. So this is created. Let me change the background of this view. We can add any hexadecimal color code here. So you can see this. This is the full relative layout. This is the background. This is my canvas. So inside this canvas or relative layout, we are going to add first one button in the middle of this layout, right? So let me add one button here. Similarly, we need to give width and height. Wrap contents means that the views will be the, we enclose all these contents of this button. I would give one text. Click me. Okay. But still, the button is not in the center. I will again write center, and it says center in parent. So I will make it true. So it moves to the center. And just remove this color code. It's much better now. Now, we need to add one text view, right, on the top of the button. This time, I'm not going to use the XML file. I'll use the design layout. Okay. Here, let's wait, sorry. Okay, right, yes. Yeah. Here we're going to give one text on top of the button. Check this file. It will automatically create out all these things that we have already written. Layout, height, width, everything is given, right? So we don't need to write it again. We will change the size of the text size. Suppose I give it 40 sp. We can also change these things from this design and here from this panel also. We can change all these things. So now we have one text box. I'm not to add anything. I'll just add 0, one button, and the next thing we need to add is we need to link this file, XML file, to the Java file, right? So any questions or anything till now? No, I think. So this is our main activity file. So here we are going to link all these buttons and text views. What we need to do, if the button will click, we need to update the text view. So first I will create one method that will be called if the button will be clicked. Okay. We have one simple way to create this. Here on click my button, right? But you can see that this method is not still here. I can move to the XML file, press Alt Enter, and create on-click button view in main activity. The Android studio will automatically detect that this layout is associated with this activity, so create this method inside this activity. Okay? So inside this method will be called whenever user will click on the button. So now what we need to do, we need to update the text view. So you can also see that for each view we have one ID. This ID is button. It can be anything. Suppose it is my button. So this button, it's saying that the layout is above this button. So it should be my button. These IDs can be anything. Because I have my text view. So I need to link this text view with my Java file. I'll create one private variable. Here again it's showing that it's not imported. The text view class should be imported here. So I can press Alt Enter and it will be imported. Okay. Then inside the onCreate, after the set content view is added, I'll link this text view with the ID. Because the Android user don't know which text view I am referring here, right? So I'll write find view by ID. Similarly, r dot, the same r file we have used here, id dot, the same ID we have defined in this XML file. Now our text view and this XML file is linked. Okay. And on the button click, what we need to do, we need to update the value of this text view. I'll create 3 integer variables. These are counter variables, integer counter 1 equal to 0, equal to 0. I've created 3 variables and I'm going to set the value of counter 1 in this text view. When on click, my button will be clicked. Okay. Think it like this. Think like this function is containing like thousands of lines. Okay, like suppose we have like thousands of lines here, and after that I am setting the value of this counter 1. I don't know what I have written all these thousands of lines. I'm just setting this value. And text view. Okay. Now I will run this application and I'll check if this will update or not. I know that this will not update, but let's first run this application. To run this application, where we are going to run, we can directly connect to an Android device via USB cable to our laptop, or we can use virtual devices. So let me show you what is virtual device. See this icon here? Is it visible? Click on this. Here it defines all the virtual devices that I have created. So let me create one new virtual device here. You can select from any other devices that are listed here, like mostly the Nexus devices. You can also select tablets, Wear, Android Wear, or any Android TV. I'm going to select one Pixel 2 for this. No. Also, you can select this Android version, which version this device will contain. Even Android P is also available, but we need to download it. Its size is like in GB, so I'm going to use this Android Oreo. Okay. Next, you can name the virtual device name my custom DVD. Suppose finish. So here this device is created. You can run this from using this play button here, or we can run the application directly using this play button, run this app, and it will show all the connected devices on top tab. Here, no devices connected to my PC, so it is showing none, and available virtual devices that I have already. So this virtual device is not started, but I have already installed on my system. So I'll select this one and press OK. It will start this virtual device. It will take some time.
Yeah.
Yes, it's done. On Android Studio virtual devices, first time it takes some time to run, but from the second time it stores one snapshot of this device, and from the second time it runs more quickly than the first one. You can also use some third-party devices. Some third-party devices are available. One is called, one most popular one is called Genymotion. Here you can download this Genymotion Android emulator. But remember that this one is not for commercial use. They have mentioned it on there. You can use it for your personal projects. So you can download this one. Lots of devices are available, but mostly use this Genymotion. It's starting. So
let's start with the layout.
yeah, yes, it's coming. Okay. So we know that this is not going to update our text view here. So we can print one log, okay, to debug these applications. It's still not run. Error. Delete this one. So we know that this is not going to update this text view, so we can put on log here. Okay. So Kaushal has explained you that different types of logs are available. D means that it's a debug log. So we need to pass two text strings here. The first one is the tag of this log. I have written my log. And we are printing the value of the counter. So we'll see how this will work. It's finally starting, I think. It's installing the APK. Okay, it starts. So it's not working, right? Then I'll run it again with these logs. Okay, so let me check how these logs will print. I will move to the logcat tab here, and here I need to select the device where I'm going to check the logs. This is the emulator, and this is the package ID of our application. In the device, there are a lot of applications are installed, right? The YouTube videos and all these things. So we need to check our ID. In this tab, so it's we need. I will add this tag. Okay. Then if I click on this, then you can see these logs are printed here. This is the basic way of debugging one application. Also, we have one different way. Suppose I am incrementing the value of these counter variables, all these counter variables, except this counter one. Okay, I'm incrementing this value of counter to here. Okay. And this time I will not print the log statement again, because I don't know on which step. I have thousands of steps here. So I don't know on which step I have not incremented this value or I have misplaced this value. So I'm going to this time click on this button. This is debugging button. Okay. This will start the application in the same way that but you can see that it's started in debug mode. So it will still work, but we can add some points where we can instruct the application to stop execution. It's called breakpoint. Suppose I want to stop the application execution here and here. Okay. This time, if I click on click me button, it will stop here. Then it will print out the values of all this. Like counter 2 has 6 value and counter 3 has 6. Then I can resume the execution pressing this button. So now counter 2 has 7 because I've incremented the value. Now counter 3 has 6. Again, suppose I'm adding 1 here. This time counter 1 is 0, counter 3 is 7. Okay. And if you want to know the value of all these variables, or if you want to add some specific statements here, you can add one watch. It's called watch. Suppose you want to print the value of counter 1 plus counter 2. We can add this 6. 3 minus counter 1. This one. Next time I will execute, these things will be printed. So this the addition of this is 7. This is 7. It will remove these breakpoints. If you click it again, it will remove the breakpoints. Then resume this application. Okay. So we will add this incrementation of this counter 1 here. So this time our application should work, right? I'll play the play button again. So now it's working. So these are the basic steps of debugging an application in Android Studio. Mainly put logs whenever you want, and debug logs are automatically removed in the final APK build, so you can put it anywhere you want. And also you can check the profiler tab here. Here it shows the CPU, memory, and networks, all these things. You can see the memory is increasing or not. If it's increasing, means that there is a memory leak. We are not going to cover all these things in this meetup. So, and so these are the basic things of like debugging and creating an app. So, any doubts or anything? Anything?
Open that activity XML.
This one?
So, to add a few extra button or anything there on screen. So, should I need to use this relative layout, right?
You can use any layouts. I'm just, for this example, I'm using relative layout. Relative layouts means we can place all this style relative to each other. So that's why I'm using relative layout. You can put one more button here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means
Like, suppose I want to club the few buttons there, one layout. So I have to use the relative layout only, right?
you can also use linear layout. Linear layouts or constant layout or anything.
That's it to use linear layout. So all these different types of layout, they have different properties, right? So in relative layout, the property of relative layout is here the views are actually relative to each other. So this view is above this view by 20 dp. This view is below this view or right to this view by 30 dp. So these are relative to each other. In linear layout, views are actually, if it's vertical or horizontal, if you keep it. So there's one view, there's second view, there's third view. There is no relation between them. So that's the linear layout. So we are using relative layout here. So this comes under view group. View groups are something that can hold other views. Right? So relative layout is one of those, and then there is constant layout that Android gives by default. There is linear layout, there is frame layout. We'll see all this, but for this session, we use relative layout, which is easiest of all layouts, I believe. So, yeah, you can use layout inside a layout.
But it's not a good practice to use multiple layouts because it may cause some profiling problem. It's like the Android system will need to draw the layouts. If you use like linear layout inside relative layout, then inside linear layout, then it will be some difficult for Android system to draw the apps. Means it will may lag. So this is the best way to not use multiple layouts internally.
Unless you have to.
Unless you have to.
If you have to, then there's no choice. But usually, like, there are other better ways to do it. So, any other questions? How's this app? One nice app, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
If I created one more layout for tab, instead of using the the size of APK will.
It will actually, yeah, it will increase.
It will increase. But
Suppose I have an application, 15 activities and 15 layouts, but it's all basically for any smartphone device. But for the tablet, I have the implemented both for the tablet specific instead of using and all. It will include the size.
Yes.
Yes.
So the question he asked is if we support multiple layouts and for multiple layouts, there are different images, different sort of layout, different orientation, will the size increase, right? So the short answer is yes, the size will increase. And if you are actually interested in how to reduce your APK size, so there is actually an excellent resource by Google, by Android. So check that out. So what they do is they create separate APKs for separate devices, multiple APKs, and you can upload all as one. So it's a very good resource, and if you just Google how to reduce your APK size, you will get that.
you can search for split APK.
Split APK.
Split APK. This one. Build multiple APKs.
By this you can reduce the APK size.
Multiple APKs. And also, instead of using PNG, we can use vector images. If you have simple images, then you can better use vector images on Android.
Yeah,
Yes.
PNG is like the resources, the PNGs files. These are like lossless compression, right? So the size is huge. With vector, the size will be small, and you have like a lot of more control. You can get animations. So use vectors where you can use it. So these are all sort of optimizations. Is when your app is ready, right? So these are the optimizations. So check that out. So you'll get that.
And if I use the dynamic folder, it will use same look for tablet also.
It will actually depends on you. So what I want is like right now it's like this, right? There is a text view, then below the text view there is a button. Right now I want it like that. But now if I want in a tablet, what I want is text view here and button here, side by side. I can do that. So for that, what you have to do is you create another layout folder called layout-land. So on landscape mode, I want the layout to be different. On portrait mode, I want it to be different. If you want it to be same, you can do that also. If you want it to be same, you don't have to do anything. But if you wanted different experience on different devices or different API version, you can do that.
It doesn't automate the layout. For example, if this is the layout for a portrait version, so you have to tell it if you need a specific layout for a landscape version. It won't automate the layouts and other stuff for the landscape version.
No, you have to tell Android. Otherwise, like right now, just to open that, open that emulator and portrait there.
Yeah.
No purpose.
We can just portrait
Rotate
this, rotate
Now,
it.
once this device is rotated,
This
you
looks
can see
like
the counter, the activity is recreated, the counter is reset, and it's exactly the same layout. And Android is trying to,
That is a big problem with Android development.
yeah. So that Android is trying its best, but it's not good enough. You can see,
Okay.
right? So you can actually create a separate layout, separate for this orientation, so it will work on this orientation. It will look good on tablet as well.
And I also had this question: how good is the emulator? Because a lot of people have talked to, they always prefer to test it on actual devices.
Actual device is always preferable. But yeah, this emulator, if you're using Android emulator 2.0 onwards, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's a big. It puts a big strain on the battery, on the performance, and if
Also,
you're using like
sorry.
some 8 GB RAM PC, Windows PC, or even in Mac, if you're using, the performance will slow down.
And one more thing. So I read, and I was there for another discussion. It was about the lifecycle for Android. So that is the solution to this problem of Android, like the over automated thing.
Right. You're probably talking about architecture components and all.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's actually for activity rotation, what happens is, an activity is rotated. When you rotate the device, the entire activity is destroyed and a new instance of the activity is created. So for persisting the data, the Android architecture component is actually, it's pretty good the way to handle that, persist the data and again repopulate the activity. That is one way. Or if you want to do it manually, you can do that.
You can see that I am incrementing the counter here. It's 4, right? I'm just moving to this horizontal view. It becomes 0.
It's gone because activity is created.
Any other things?
So how much would you pay for this app?
Yeah, in Android Studio emulator, we have also different options, like you can simulate all these things, like cellular network type, battery. Again,
So I was actually once creating this application where I had to do battery optimization. So if a battery is below 25%, then do this. So for that, I can test that on the emulator. On the real device, you have to wait till 25% is there, right? So in
And
emulator, you can do all this.
you can also send one message here. Check.
If you have multiple emulators, you can send SMS from here. You can receive the SMS here.
Call,
You can call.
device and all this.
So it will give you it will fire the actual intent. So you can test your actual application, like how it will behave in actual phone. You can test that.
With Android development, so what is the practice? So for example, you can develop apps in Python, but apps in Python based on key or any sort of thing.
Yeah.
So this is the recommended way. Like Java is the way. Now Kotlin, but like I just gave the word for Java. I'm more of a Python person.
So you like Java? Verbosity? You don't like, right? Yeah. So if you're a Python person, then go for Kotlin. Yeah, it's we're not covering it here, but yeah, it's 100% interoperable with Java. You create 2 classes in Java, you create 5 classes in Kotlin. They all can talk to each other in the same application. It's awesome, and there's extension also in Kotlin. In Java, probably it will catch up in Java 10.0 or something. Yeah, till then, go for Kotlin. Any other questions?
Anything else or?
regarding the DPL, pricing of the I was just doing so on the 4 it was looking great, but for the 3.2 and 3.1 the layout was just better on the downside.
What is that?
3.0 speed size.
Okay.
So it was small phone. Downside buttons were not visible. How can put relative and resizing of the buttons and contents?
So there is scroll view you can use. You can use relative layout is actually awesome for if you want to put equi-spaced views in some places. You put a relative layout with weights. It's awesome. So you can put put weight of 2, weight of 1, put weight of 2, weight of 1, weight of 1. So it's 50%, 25%, 25% of your weight. Doesn't matter your width is 3 inches or 24 inches. So it will scale like that. So there are some things that we can use.
You can also
And
use
just one more thing. I have this very low resolution phone that actually uh, that we got from Google. So that is very Android one phone. So in that there is this pop-up comes for when I try to cast my YouTube video on my TV. This pop-up comes, and in on YouTube app it's actually this part is cut off. Half of the part is cut off, so I cannot even click the other button. So that happens in Android. So I mean, don't worry about those users.
In iOS, we can we use the auto layout, right?
Yeah.
Can you also use it for Android?
Yeah, constant layout is there. So we have not covered constant layout here, but it is like quite similar to auto layout. You can put constants here, and with constants you can actually put a lot of animations also with just simple 2 lines of code.
So guys, we can do it in UI level.
You can do it there. By default, constant layout comes, right? So it's relatively actually a new addition to the Android View family. So, but yeah, it is quite similar to auto layout, where you put constants with distance and you can increase all those things. I mean, the closest thing we have to that Android iOS auto layout is constant layout.
Okay, so
This is the activity lifecycle.
yeah, so this is the activity lifecycle. Lifecycle means this on start, on resume. These are actually just override methods. Let me click this main activity here. So you can see this on create method here. This is override method. Similarly, we have other on start, on resume, all these things. So how it works actually, it's if at the first time whenever activity means the application starts and activity is created, then on create is called, and at this time this means activity is not visible to the user. So that's why we are setting this set content view here. This is on create. After that, it will call this on start method. This time it will be visible to the user. Then on resume. Resume means it's still visible. And if anyone press the home button, then application will move to the background, right? Then on pause will be called. Means the application is partially visible, means it's not visible, but it's still in there. And on stop will be called here. Similarly on pause, and again if you move back to the foreground, then it will on resume will be called, then on pause, on resume, and on stop will be called. Suppose one new activity comes up, and for each activity one process is associated. The process that is associated with this activity is killed, then on stop will be called. We still have all these things in the memory, right? Suppose I am writing this in our application is 1, 2, 3, 4. Whenever on stop will be called, this screen will not be visible here, but this 5, this is still in the memory. We can achieve these things using one object called bundle object. So, then this on stop will be called, and on destroy means that this is all totally destroyed from the memory. Then you cannot retrieve any unsafe things after on destroy will be called. So this is the main things, like on created it's not visible yet, on started means it's visible, and on resume, on pause means it's already in the foreground, and on stop means hidden, and on start is gone from the memory. So I think that's it. Anything?
What will happen if we set the content?
Set the content view in the onstart. We cannot set out content view in the onstart because it's already visible. After visible, we cannot set it. Before the visibility, we need to set it, because after application comes up, we can set it. And
When the activity is getting created, Android will not know which layout to open.
let me move it here on start.
We'll edit this on the recording, by the way.
Maybe it will run or it will throw an error. Let me check. it's running, but sometimes it will fail, I think, on start. On create. But you can see this view appears a little bit later. Kill this click counter here. We'll open this click counter. Oh, this one. Here. It takes, I think, a little later than this. But was it recommended? Yes, this one here. Anything else, or
Any other question on Android or Android Studio?
or any other questions we can discuss, not related to Android?
Okay, or any other questions if you have, we can take it right now or maybe after the session.
I have two questions, but on that, like how the industry is going towards the native application versus the React, JS, and all that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, Android Studio. One more thing I want to show is, it's like there are some things are Android Studio suggests some of the things automatically. Like here, it says this string is hard coded. It should actually pick it from the Android resource strings.xml folder, so that you can do the localization properly. These are some suggestions here that if you follow, you can do. There is Android lint. You can set the rules and you can see all this sorts of warning and you can fix it before shipping your product. Yeah, so that's about it on Android. Yeah.
One last question. How do we manage this? After we deploy the application, let's say we deploy on Amazon, we keep some variables that we don't have to deploy it again.
No, you deploy it on Amazon Web Service. You deploy it on Google Play.
We make an application and we deploy on some cloud service, cloud server.
It talks to the cloud server because you deploy it on Google Play, right? Or deployed it on Amazon means what?
I mean, the entire software is hosted on the cloud, which is Amazon Web Service, and suppose you put it on the Play Store.
Okay, so your backend is let's say Amazon Web Service.
Right.
Okay.
The question basically, how do we have the some variables defined which we can control on the runtime without having a deployment?
Yeah. So actually, you can do that. You can have a static key value mapping, a JSON file. Every time the app starts, fetch from there, the read it, update your app. You can do that. But there's another recommended way to do that on Android and iOS as well, is Firebase remote config. Yeah, it's awesome. Actually, its popularity has caused, the remote config SDK has been used more than Facebook SDK. It's actually very popular and very efficient.
Google Firebase.
No, forget about Google. Firebase remote config. Yeah. You can try that.
There are more methods in activity lifecycle, like on stage, state. So
Right.
can we cover them today or something?
So right now we're not covering it, and actually he mentioned something there.
Yes, bundle. Yes.
So
Actually,
it's like, let's say you're filling a form. So you have entered 4 lines, right? You entered your name, age, date of birth, and etc., address and all, and now suddenly your screen rotates. So now all the thing is gone, right? Our counter value is gone. So similarly, all the values are gone. So in that case, if you want to give your user a better experience, good experience, what the user would expect is what the values I've entered, even though I've not clicked on save, the values I've entered should retain should actually, sustain device orientation change and all this things. So what you do is you override the on save instance state method, and there is a bundle there. You put all the values in that bundle, and in on create there is it receives a bundle. Yeah, this is the bundle pass. Those values you can fetch during on create. So when the activity is rotated, on create will be called again. That is destroyed. On create will be called again. Those values you can actually fetch from on saved instance state, and you can populate the text views or edit texts.
It's like a persistent container in Android.
Which is
This is like a persistent container in Android.
activity or the bundle? Bundle is actually, it's for storing objects, and you can store objects or values in a bundle and then you pass it around. It's not permanent storage. So, yeah.
In case if I upload one code and if to have downloaded that again after a while update that version. So it will automatically update that app, or we need to automatically.
No, actually, it depends on user settings first of all. So if like in my phone, I have done the setting that if any update is available, update it automatically whenever my phone is connected to Wi-Fi and charging. So and initially when I had some older phone, actually I had the setting as off. So if any update is available, I get a notification this update is available, and then I manually had to update it. So this is entirely user setting. Yeah.
Suppose I want to polling application. Two question is there, and on that two option is there. Everyone gives their polling on that, their votes on that. So I want to get the response offline and upload that data afterward. So how much data store, how much record that I can maintain in my application itself offline?
You're talking about like
Save the data locally and then afterward. Yeah.
so there's no such limit defined that how much data you can save. But you know, if you're doing polling, potentially like in 10 MB, you can store, I don't know, much huge amount of data in 10 MB, right? And 10 MB is allowed. Yeah.
What's the use of
On restore instance state. Okay. So that is actually, you know, that there also you receive the bundle there. If you don't want to do it here, you can do it there. So what happens is, we face actually one issue where when the activity is open and you're clicking on the notification, the onCreate is already called. The onCreate is called, now activity is in the resumed state, right? And now if I click on the notification, it will again, the notification click is actually trying to open the same activity. In that case, onCreate will not be called. Right? It's already open, it's in the resumed state. If the app is closed, I click it, onCreate will be called, I receive data in saved instance state, I populate the UI and everything. But when my app is already open and things are happening, right? So in that case, how do you get the data? You get from on restore instance state. So if you do it there, so you don't have to do it here. So that's it on Android. Have you, how many of you actually are iOS developers and have used Swift, Objective-C? Not Objective-C, just Swift. Okay. So a lot of us have not used Swift. So next we'll be covering Swift. We'll be taking a 5 minutes break here. There's tea outside. After that we'll be starting with Swift and iOS development. So we did not cover Java because the initial assumption was, Java and object-oriented programming in general. But since a lot of us do not know Swift, right? So we're also trying to cover Swift, and we'll be starting from basics, from variable declaration to functions. Is there anyone who has not worked on any language other than Java, or has not worked on any functional language like JavaScript or Python? There's no one. Okay. So when I started with Swift, I was like, this language is so bad because there are functions, they're residing outside classes. How is it possible? I mean, I was not even able to think about it, So there are a lot of things there, and it's a wonderful language. So please do stay back and learn about the language, and check out how Xcode and how is it different from this from what we created in this. We'll create the same thing on iOS using Xcode. Xcode is the IDE for iOS app development. So yeah.
One question. Say I'm new in Android.
Okay.
So should I go for Android or Kotlin?
Java or Kotlin?
I'm done at Android and Java.
Okay.
I'm good at iOS. So what is the preferred?
So what do you use, Objective-C or Swift?
Objective-C, Swift.
Both. What do you use more, Swift or Objective-C?
Objective-C.
Then you can go for either, doesn't matter. Then you can go for either Java or Kotlin, doesn't matter. But if you use Swift,
what would be the preferred in considering as a developer for the future?
For the future, right? So for like Swift is the future for iOS development, right? So for Swift, the language which is closer to Swift is Kotlin, not Java.
Okay.
So for just the example that I gave, right? I was into Java development. I was using Java like for 5 years, and then I moved into Swift, and I was like, no, what is this? For Python developers, it will be easy to grasp. relatively easy to grasp than Java developers. And similarly, if you are into Kotlin development, it will be easier for you to learn Swift. And if you're a Swift developer, it will be easier for you to learn Kotlin than Java. And other thing is like Kotlin is relatively new, so you may not find as many examples of Kotlin that you may find in Java. Java has been there, I don't know since when. Right? So suggestion is, I would suggest Kotlin is a big plus point. Kotlin makes development a lot more fun than Java. In Java, you just keep typing. There is a user object, and then you have to create getter and setter. Oh my god, it's like 50 lines of code, and what you have done, nothing. So, yeah, so please do stay back. We'll take a 10 minutes break here. We'll start by 1:15 or maybe 1:17. उसको कॉल करो ना